So welcome back to part 2 of the video. I'm here with Father Paul again. He just very graciously gave us a lovely tour of the church and some of the history. And now I'm going to ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So, could you know a little bit about yourself first? So how did you become Orthodox? Were you born into a Christian family?
I was, yes. I was born into the family of a very, very high church Anglican clergyman. My dad, and because I was so badly behaved in the rector's pew that my mother got fed up with me in the pew, and so she persuaded my father to train me as a server when I was 5. So I started serving at the altar when I was 5, and I served for the daily mass with my father until I went away to boarding school. And at boarding school, my father had written to the chaplain to say, Raymond, that's my secular name, Raymond knows how to serve, he'll serve for you. And the chaplain thought, oh, well, I'll put on the daily Eucharist. So my second day at school, he came down to the house where I was living and asked who was Raymond Elliot, and would you like to be the server? I said, yes, please. And I served for him every day in school time until I was 18, from the age of 10.
Wow.
So I served with the chaplain. He was a very good, sound Anglican Christian, and very devout. I got the liturgy ready for him every day, and I served for him every day. So it's been in my blood since I was a little boy.
Yeah.
My mother and father were very devout people, and they brought me up like that. And school was, I did a lot in the church, in the chapel, school chapel. So it made me very much, it's sort of deeply part of my life, worshipping.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
and then I went from school to university in Exeter, and I said to one of my lecturers, so where's a good Anglo-Catholic parish to worship? And he said, mine. And so I went to St Mary's Steps, Exeter, which was where he was the parish priest, Father Michael Morton, and he was a famous liturgist, famous Anglican, very, very high Anglican liturgist. And he only did services that were pre-schism. So the Mass was Ordo Romanus Primus, except translated into English. And it was there were no modern hymns. It was just ancient. It was almost like Western Rite.
Orthodoxy. It sounds very.
It was almost like Western Rite Orthodoxy. And Father Morton taught me liturgy. And one Sunday when I was doing the lavabo, he said, "And what subject are you doing next year?" And I said, "I'm doing, I don't know." He said, "You're doing mine." And so I was then specialising in history of liturgy and worship, which was his specialist subject. And he said, well, your first bit of homework is to go to the Orthodox liturgy. And it's at St Olave's in Exeter. And I went, and it was all in Slavonic. And it reminded me of what it was like when I was 5.
Yeah.
It had a presence that I've never forgotten. It was extraordinarily beautiful. I didn't understand it, but it was extraordinarily beautiful. And Father Peter Scora was singing, and his family, and it was just heaven and earth. I just loved it. And so I studied it more and more. And then when I left university, Father Morton said to me, you need to go and see it. The Orthodox liturgy really served in its most ancient form. Go to Mount Athos. So I went to Mount Athos at Father Michael Morton's instruction. And I went to 3 different monasteries on Mount Athos and finally ended up at what I pronounced incorrectly, Simonas Petras Monastery, which overlooks the Aegean and is 300 foot up on the top of a cliff. It's an amazing, amazing place. And I was there, I thought, for my last night on Mount Athos. And Father David, who was the guest master, came to me and he said, "You are to stay for another 2 days." And I said, "Right, okay." Because as a Protestant on the Holy Mountain, you're only allowed 4 days.
Right.
So I suddenly got this instruction: you are to stay for another 4 days. I said, for another 2 days. I said, okay. I said, why? A monk wishes to speak with you. Okay. So the next day they put me in the icon workshop for the day, something to do with this strange English visitor. What do you do with him? Shove him in the workshop. So I learnt actually a lot that day.
I can imagine.
And then on the next day, after the liturgy, which was at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then breakfast, they guided me, Father David guided me into a room. And I sat in this room, and a door opened, and it was a room with like Venetian blinds, so there was only sort of, there was kind of little shafts of morning light coming into this room. And there were pictures of the Tsar and pictures of kings and so on, all of which had fallen from power. It was a very strange room, and I was sat on a settee, an old settee. And the young monk came in. I thought, oh, it's a young monk. And he sat on a hard chair. I remember him, it was a hard chair. I was sat on a soft chair. And suddenly I started feeling uncomfortable. I thought, I shouldn't be sat on something that is comfortable. Why is he? And this man was more like an angel than a man. I've never encountered anything quite like it in all my life. Yeah. And he knew everything about me. He knew all my questions, whether I should become a Catholic, whether I should become a monk, whether I should marry, all these things. He knew everything about me. And I didn't have to almost say anything, because he knew my name, he knew everything about me. And he then said, "You must marry the girl you're with now," which was Matушka, my then girlfriend. "And you will be an Orthodox priest." And I thought, but I'm already signed up training as an Anglican clergyman. This is what I've been prepared for all my life by my father. I've always been prepared for this. I didn't ask, I didn't question. I just had this resounding message. You will be an Orthodox priest. Wow. And then when I looked at him, he shone. It was one of those experiences that few people, you can't step away from an experience like that and be the same. So the person that stepped on the Holy Mountain in 1979 changed, and I stepped off the Holy Mountain a rather different person in those 4 or 5 days than I was.
Yeah.
And although I obeyed him immediately and married Matушka as fast as I could, it took me about 8 or 9 years to come to terms with actually what he told me to do. And I resigned in 1988 as an Anglican clergyman and became Orthodox 1988, and I was eventually ordained deacon 1994 and priest 1998. So that was my journey for what that is worth.
Truly fascinating.
Yeah.
Truly fascinating. So my next question was, how did you become an Orthodox priest? But you answered that question within the first question.
Well, in a way, I actually became a layman, much to the disappointment of my father in some ways. I became a layman in 1988, resigned very quietly from the Church of England. I didn't make a big thing, I just quietly left.
Well, they're very nice to us, and they've been very good to us,
yes.
particularly the High Anglicans.
Yeah. And
I have a lot of
I
respect
didn't want
for
to
a lot of
offend my family either.
Yeah, of course.
That's all. So I just quietly disappeared and retrained as a teacher. And I'm glad I had that period, actually. Although I found some aspects of it frustrating, I'm glad. And I'm glad I was a deacon for 4 years, because that enabled me to learn the services well. And Vladika Mark made sure, because I trained at St Edward's Brookwood, and Vladika Mark wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing. So I'm basically a liturgical robot. For the services that I'm trained to do, I know how to do them. I don't have to read the rubrics and see what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And that's a blessing, because it means that I can pray and not be worrying about what's happening next. Yeah. And I can even, because I was trained to tell servers what to do, and as you know, when you're serving in the altar, I will do various symbols. And you know what I mean by those. I don't have to speak in the altar.
It took me a couple of weeks to learn. They're not always the most self-explanatory, but once you know them,
Once you know them,
you know them.
You know them.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
and the idea is that there's no unnecessary chatter in the altar.
No, definitely.
So they're exactly the same symbols as Vladika Mark taught me. So you do that for the incense, you do that for a candle, do that for a fan, you do that for the hot water. And the server knows exactly what you want eventually. You never have to say, "Excuse me, could you pass me the thing?"
No, definitely.
It's just easy, much easier.
Try this quiet and reverent as possible.
Yes. So, yes. I was ordained in Munich. I was ordained priest in Munich.
Munich?
Yeah. The Cathedral of the New Martyrs and Confessors of Russia in Munich.
Was that before we had our London Cathedral?
The London Cathedral was there, this was being built. But it was because Vladika Mark he wanted me in his monastery for a week to learn how to serve. So I was serving priest in that monastery at 4 a.m. in the morning, all in Slavonic except all my bits were in English. And sometimes Vladika Mark would be the choir. Sometimes he would be standing just at my side. That was a very amazing experience to do that. So I love that little monastery, particularly for that reason.
So far, you've mentioned a couple of things. Vladika, Slavonic, things like this that maybe the average person at home isn't necessarily familiar with, which has led in some circles in Britain an image of Orthodoxy that it is just for Russians, or it's just for Greeks, or I'm sure you're familiar with the point often made by various other Christian groups. What would you say to the people of Britain, to the youth of Britain, that are looking at Orthodoxy and they're being told by other Christians that it's just for Russians or it's just for Greeks, because it's not at all?
No, Vladika Mark, Vladika means little lord. It's an affectionate title, really. Vladika Mark is German. Vladika Rene is American. Neither of them are Russian. Neither of them. Both of them speak good Russian. But that's not necessary at all. And Vladika Mark, I said to him, "Should I learn Russian?" And he said, "Well, it's useful, but you don't need to." And I was originally ordained. This was to be an English mission. Originally, only.
Yeah.
But at least half the parishioners, if not more, are some kind of Russian. But most of the service is done in English. And that is something distinctive about the Church abroad, that we don't necessarily, we like all the Slavonic history, the Russian history, but we do try to address and care for the people of the land that we find ourselves in. And many of our clergy are not Russian.
I'd say probably 40% of this parish is English at this point.
No, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
At this point.
Yes.
40% of the parish, and most of the people who serve in the clergy
are converts.
Are at least from an English-speaking country,
yeah.
Whether that be South Africa or America or something.
Yes.
Which is definitely good to see.
Yes. Yes, I mean, we do have Nikita and Yakov, young Nazar, Timo is Georgian. So we do have servers that aren't British converts or South African or whatever, American. But yes, there's a lot of quite young people that are quite committed, really very committed, and do a lot.
There is.
So, and it's not. Thing is, if you come here, yes, it's got a kind of Russian feel to it, but it's very definitely you're in England.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we pray for the Queen. We pray for her government. We pray for the armed forces. And you hear those. Yes, we pray for the Russian lands and their people, but very much you will hear that the Queen has prayed for our country, the people, the Orthodox people who dwell in this land. So yeah, I hope it feels appropriate for Britain, appropriate for England.
Yeah. I think so.
And I think it is proving itself to be so.
Yeah, I don't know, I definitely think so. I mean, the number of young converts we have, particularly young men,
Yes.
is exponential. I remember at one point it was at least a convert a month that was being
Yes.
baptised,
Oh yes.
which is definitely impressive. And I think as well, this parish particularly, we went round it before, and we do have a number of icons of the British saints, whether that be the icon of the British saints over there, or whether it be various individual saints that we have.
Oh yes.
And I think twofold. I think that one that speaks to British people, which I think is important, but I believe it was St. Arsenios that said, and I say this all the time, I'm sure you know what I'm about to say, the Church in the British Isles will not begin to grow until she begins to venerate her own saints.
No.
And I think that in this parish in particular, there is a lot of icons of the British saints. And I think that not only does that speak to people, but I think that that is a blessing to us all and to the country. I think that's very important.
So, and what else did you want to ask me?
So we're sort of coming to a close here because we've had a fair discussion. But if you were able to give a message, one message, to the people in Britain regarding orthodoxy, what would that be?
I think probably
It's a hard question, I know.
it's not. Remember that it is not something alien. It is actually the truth. It is actually the faith. And yes, it might have a little bit of a Russian veneer or a Greek veneer or whatever, but actually it is worth overcoming that in order to step closer towards the truth. And that's, in the end, we need to, as British people, or English-speaking people, overcome our arrogance and think, why is it, it can't always be geared up just for the English, just for the British.
Yeah.
It's actually a universal church. It's
Truly
not
Catholic.
That's right. It's not just for the British. And the thing I love about St. Elizabeth's and anybody who would come here is that it is multinational. We have people from all kinds of countries, and they are all united, and they're united in love for Christ. That is why they come. They don't come for any other reason. And it's that which I think I say to the people of our land, if you want to find something that will unite you to Christ, then come to Orthodoxy.
Definitely. What you said reminds me of a quote from St. John of Shanghai in San Francisco, I believe. He said, "The West was Orthodox for over 1,000 years, and her venerable liturgy was older than any of her heresies."
Yes.
And I think that it's important to remember that.
Yes.
It's definitely.
And as people say, well, why don't we have a different kind of liturgy that is just for the British, or And I think, no, the Orthodox liturgy converted Russia. St. Vladimiir's emissaries went to Constantinople. They witnessed the liturgy. They knew not whether they were in heaven or in earth, and they took that liturgy back to Russia, and it converted Russia. So if it's good enough to convert Russia, it's good enough to convert England. And it will, and it does. So there we are.
So finally, is there anything else that you would like to discuss, anything else that you would like to say about this parish, the church, the people in the UK?
I would only say that I love my parish. I love my parish.
Your parish loves you.
And when I had to address Synod in 2018, I opened my talk to the bishops who had come to consecrate our cathedral, that I'm the happiest man in England. And I am. It's the loveliest parish that there is, and I love it.
It's definitely a wonderful parish, and it's shown by, I mean, we have one family, and the man is about to become our deacon, and they travel 4.5 hours to come here. They travel 4.5 hours to come to our parish.
Well, you come a long way, Oswald.
Soon to be a bit shorter.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a number of people though. We have people that travel from Manchester. We have people that travel, well at one point someone that was travelling from Wales.
Yes.
And there's a reason why people travel here. There definitely is. So thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure, and God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Father Paul, for your time. Nicholas is behind there. He's been the cameraman today. So thank you very much for that. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you sometime soon.
Bye-bye.